Hello, my name is Bryant Hawthorne. I am a product manager at Mojang. I focus on creator tools, and today we're going to talk about Editor. So real quick, what is Editor? Some of you might be familiar with that, some might not. This tutorial is really just an overview of Editor in general. If you want very specific tutorials, we're going to hopefully start building some of those out and go into depth with some of the tooling. This is designed to be just a general overview of getting started with Editor. And so first thing I just want to give overview is like, why are we building this tool? What does it do? Minecraft is inherently creative. And so depending on what you're doing, you might go into creative mode in Bedrock and you're building things block by block. That's amazing. That is a really good way that most people get started. But if you want to build a experience at scale, a giant world, giant castles, building things block by block is really difficult. And so we've designed Editor to be primarily a world building tool where you can build things at scale. Big features like selections and brushes make that a lot easier to do. And there's a lot of other features that are outside of world building that we're starting to introduce into Editor. So how do you get started in Editor? Where do you find it? How do you download it? Let's start there. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into Launcher. So Editor just released version 1.0. I don't know when you're watching this, but you see all these fancy particle effects. We're kind of celebrating the release of getting out of beta with this. But if you have Bedrock, you have Editor already. It is PC only right now, and I highly recommend using a keyboard and mouse. For example, if you're using Photoshop, you're going to have a better experience with kind of these more professional tools using keyboard and mouse to actually use things like keyboard shortcuts and things like that. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to install Bedrock if you don't have it. I have it installed, so right now it just says Launch Editor. For example, to get to this page, you'll start there. You probably start in the Play tab here under Bedrock. You'll click on the Creator Tools tab, which is a relatively new tab inside a launcher. And then again, you can install or launch Editor if you have Bedrock already downloaded. We do have support for preview and release versions. So if you want to play around with new versions of Editor as well, you can do that directly here and then launch what version you want directly. So I already have it open. I want to avoid a few load screens to make this a little bit quicker. So we're going to start here. It's going to look very similar to creating a new world inside of Bedrock, but instead of a world, it's a project. So we're going to click this button. Again, this whole flow is going to feel very familiar to you. You don't really need to change too much here. If you do want to add a resource pack or behavior pack, you can do that just like a world. But the main thing is coming in here, just hitting the create button, and it will have a random seed. You can change the different world type. So if you want an infinite world, flat world, void world, you can do that as well, and Editor works great. So it really depends what you are doing. So I'm going to switch over to another version that I have going. Just again, I'm going to avoid some load screens here. So when you launch an Editor, it might feel very overwhelming. You might say, wow, I don't even know where to start in this. That's because it's a professional tool. This is really designed for people that want to build things quick inside of Bedrock. And so it takes a little bit of time to get familiar with that. And so I'm hoping that this video really helps dive into just a general overview so it might not feel as overwhelming for you. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through our tutorial system. I highly recommend new people coming into Editor go through that, because I think it will introduce some concepts to you that are really worth learning before you just kind of dive in, and you might be making assessment if Editor is right for you or not. And if you don't know how to use it, you might make the wrong choice here. So if you don't have the tutorial that launches right away, you can go into the help menu here and click tutorial. This will walk you through that. The first thing I want to highlight is moving in Editor is different than Bedrock. And the reason for that is after talking to a lot of creators, we realized that they wanted movement like more professional tools like computer-aided design, CAD, or other 3D modeling tools. And so we really looked at, hey, what are best practices? We talked to a lot of our creators on that and locked on these movement paradigms. And so I'm going to turn on my keyboard here just so you can see what I'm doing and follow along with me. First thing is clicking the right mouse button and moving it. It's going to feel very similar to what you do in Bedrock already, so nothing crazy there. Same with movement. WASD works to just navigate. But if you want to move around on the y-axis, this is where it's a little bit different. So we change things up. Q will go down for you, and E will actually raise you up. And so again, that makes it so you don't have to really move your hand, and we've reserved keyboard shortcuts for things like shift that are really valuable in kind of a professional setting. Next, we've actually added a few additional things to navigate. Zoom. So if you have middle mouse wheel, you can actually zoom in and out. That's really helpful if you're building things like structures where you might be focused, you might be doing detail work, but need to zoom back. It's just a very quick way to do that. Next is panning. So if you take your middle mouse and you click that down and hold it, it will pan. So as you saw here, it will advance in the tutorial as soon as you complete all the steps. The next thing I want to highlight is the hotbars. So hey, we're in Minecraft, everything has to do with blocks. And so hotbar is really important when it comes to switching blocks and configuring kind of what your palette is that you want to be working with. So you can come in here, you can switch the blocks. Next, we don't do a full overview of tools on the tutorial, but the two that we find really important for pretty much anything you're doing is going to be selection and brush. They're also probably the most complicated tools, so don't feel overwhelmed with that, but you can use basically the default settings on a lot of that to complete a lot of what you want to do. So again, the tutorial goes through a lot of this. Selection. If you are too far away from things, selection won't work. And so if you're running issues there, definitely just get closer to what you're clicking on. But you can come in here, you can make it a little bit larger. And in this case, I'm going to select the lighthouse. You don't have to do this as part of the tutorial, and we'll go through it a little bit more. We also have the fill button here. So I can click that. It's going to fill it with the blocks. Probably not my best choice filling the lighthouse with the blocks, but we can undo that, which I'll show you in a second. So again, yeah, you can move the different positions. You can copy that. Again, we'll dive into details there. Next is going to be the brush. And so in this case, we're going to switch to the brush tool. And you can see just the basically a sphere here for the brush. And I can come in here and I can brush. The next thing is we try to introduce a little bit of the keyboard shortcuts into the tutorial. In this case, we're going to hold Control, and it actually removes that part of the brush. And so a really cool shortcut if you're going to carve things, maybe you want to make a little river going through and you carve that terrain, really good for that. So that's the tutorial, really good place to get started. Like I said, you can actually undo. So in this case, I'm actually just going to undo some of the things I did in the tutorial. I'm going to deselect my selection so we can kind of start from scratch, highlighting a few other features here. Another thing, when Editor launches, it usually has the settings panel open. This is a really good place to kind of configure things. This does persist from session, so highly recommend just kind of playing with this, seeing what you want to do and configure Editor specifically with. Cool thing with Editor, you actually configure your movement speed. So that's actually one thing I really like. Personally, I like a fast, kind of zippy movement speed. So we've actually overrode the default Bedrock movement speeds to allow you to move pretty quick. So if you're building a big structure, you can get around it a lot faster. UI scale, just how big is the text going to be in the UI. We also do highlight different themes, and you can customize that as well. Again, I'm not going to go super deep into any of these features. This is designed just to be a general overview here. Next thing is log panel. I don't think there's been an error since I've been doing this, but the log panel is down here. Again, it might seem pretty technical. You might not know exactly what this is, but if Editor runs into an issue, we'll flash the screen red or orange, depending if it was a warning or a error. And we'll actually put a little bit more information. So as I mentioned, selection, like in the distance, I can't select really far out. And so we'll throw an error there and we'll tell you kind of what is happening to give you a little bit more context there. So next up, just like any application, we have our menu system here. There's a couple of features here. Again, I'll talk about these in a second. But feel free to flip through these, get acquainted with some of the different UI. The ones I do want to highlight here is under world. So we pause entities by default. So if there's a pig, you might see it floating in the air because normally when you're playing on Bedrock, it will actually tick and all the entities are moving around. So you don't see that, hey, they might be floating in the air or just around. Or if you summon them, which you can do through the tools, which we'll show in a sec, you can unpause them here as well. A lot of other features here, again, won't go into too many details, but things like time of day, you might be playing with lights, for example, and you might want it to be dark. Editor by default pauses in the daytime. So that way you can kind of see everything's bright. We've actually made it so if you're in a cave or underground, it's going to be brighter. I can do that for you right here, and you'll kind of see what I mean by that. Normally everything would be very dark, and so we made it so it's brighter, so when you're actually building, you can see if you are in more of a dark environment. So you can change things like time of day here. We call this the left panel and the right panel. You might hear me refer to those. In general, some things open on the right panel and some things open in the left panel. Right panel is traditionally reserved for tools specifically. You can also change dimensions. We'll get to vibrant visuals in a second because that's a really cool feature that's relatively new for us. All right, so next up, I wanted to highlight some of our block picker. As mentioned, this is the block picker. You can come in here, click on it, and you can select blocks. You can either do that through their name or color. I really like the color feature because you can come in here, you can select the specific color. If you don't care what block you're using, you care more about the color, you can do that. Another pro tip is if you actually middle click on a specific block. So you can see that I turned that to aqua. I middle clicked on just the red, I think that's red wool here. No, red concrete. It will automatically take that block and put it in the block picker. So it's a really cool pro tip there. The other thing is you can actually save your hotbars here. So for example, I only have one right now. This is just kind of customized a few blocks, but you can actually come in here. Let's say I do want to change it. I can come in, change, let's go back to like an aqua color. Let's say I want to add a candle. I don't know why, but just for the sake of changing this, I can save it out as a separate new hotbar, and I could say like candle. Let's see here, candle. I'm going to confirm that. So I got my default hotbar. I actually saved it after I had changed that, so I can come in here. Let's again change that back. I can come in here, select that with a middle click. Good way to do it. So now I have kind of these two hotbars. I can toggle between that. So it's actually changing the whole hotbar, but because they're the same minus that one block, probably not the best example, but you kind of get the point here. Other cool thing is you can actually add lists. So let's say I have red and let's change this to maybe green, for example. Let's find a more solid block, emerald. So I can come in here. This is really handy, which I'll show in a second with some brushes, where you can change the weights of these. So it's now kind of a 50-50. So these are weights, not percentages. I can add another one, have them be the same weight, and it'll be a probability that it'll pick, in this case, the red block versus the emerald block. So really, really handy here. Next up, I want to highlight the action bar. So as I mentioned, the left panel here, sorry, the right panel is primarily reserved for action bars. And again, I can't remember if I said right or left, but the left is for the tools. And so in this case, things like structures, you can click on the specific structure. I'll get into details in this in a second, but it will pin whatever that action item is to the top of the action bar items, and you can toggle between that. So again, you can kind of customize your workflow. The left action bars, these are the same set of action items, but again, you might want to reserve the left-hand side for more quick actions like fill, can do that here, and maybe more of kind of tools and specific advanced features for the right-hand side, for example. With that, the other one I wanted to highlight, again, I won't go into a ton of details on a lot of these, is keyboard settings. Keyboard settings I found really valuable, where you can customize your keyboard shortcuts, the different settings. But pro tip, this is a really good way to learn what our shortcuts even are. And so we're doing a better job adding those shortcuts into tooltips and things like that. But if you're just like, hey, I kind of figured out editor, how do I learn a little bit more just to keep my hands on the keyboard and build a little bit faster? For example, selection. These are all the keyboard shortcuts that we have for selection. So we have a lot of pro kind of building ways you can build with shortcuts. So highly recommend checking this page out just to learn a little bit more about that. All right, next up, what do we want to chat about next? Let's dive into tools. Let's go for it. So first, as I mentioned, selection. There's a couple different modes of selection. First one that we showed in the tutorial was just our marquee selection. And if you want to learn about, hey, what are these things? We do have tooltips for most tools and modes. And so it's a really good way to be like, hey, what is this? So selection with marquee, you can use these different control points right here to actually make it bigger, smaller. You can actually fix it to a specific axis. So in this case, I just clicked that blue square there, so you can kind of see what it's doing where it's locked on that axis. I can't make it wider in this case. You can come in here, you can actually do the same thing with the middle control point. And so that's a really good way if you get a size or a specific selection that you want and you just want to shift it by a block, you can do that. We have cursor settings as well. And so like keyboard only, I can come in here and again, you have to click on the viewport to get some of these working. And so you can see my cursor moving as I click the keyboards here. You can use page up, page down to change that as well. It's really good for just having a little bit more control when you get familiar with the keyboards. I would say a lot of the keyboard shortcuts are a little bit more advanced features. And so when you're getting started, you're probably just going to primarily be using the user interface. So let me come over here again. I'm going to switch this back to mouse and keyboard. This is my favorite mode here, just to demonstrate a couple of different features that we have once a selection's made. So again, I have this list view. So this is a list of 2 blocks that we made before. I can come in here. I can use my quick actions. So quick fill, for example. You can see exactly what it does. This is a good demonstration of that kind of randomness you can get with the block lists. If I don't like that selection or I'm done with it, I can click the deselect. That's going to go away, or I can delete that. You can also undo. So in this case, I did Control Z. I undid basically deselection. I can come in here and I can now delete that. So I had some of the ground selected when I did that. It's going to delete some of the terrain. You can use selection for removing some terrain as well. So if I don't have a good place and I'm building like a structure or something, I'll sometimes come in here and do that. So you can see the example of that. Next up is I want to highlight a freehand brush select. And so brush, we have a brush mode and a brush selection mode. And so I'll dive into brush, but once you figure out brush, brush selection works very similar, but it's just in the context of selection. So I can come in here, I can kind of draw with the brush and you see exactly what it's doing. Again, I can go and use my quick action fill here. It's going to fill that. I'm going to deselect it so you can see that a little bit better. So you can paint different things. You can use different brushes. I'll deep dive into the brushes in a second. And then we have Magic Select. I really like Magic Select. We're still iterating on it, but it is a really cool feature where basically the algorithm will take whatever the bottom block is that you have clicked on, and it will move that, just look for everything that is above that. So if I come in here with this lighthouse and select, it will select everything above that specific point that I've clicked on. So you can do some really cool things with that. Example of that, I'll come over here to these blocks that I already pasted, or brushed in, I should say. I'll get a little bit closer because that's throwing a warning at me. We have different trim actions. And so you can see that my selection is a little, well, because I use Magic Select, it's actually using the bounding box. But let's say I manually did that and I came in here and I want to be kind of lazy with how I'm doing this. Oops, I have misclicked. But look, I can undo it. So good example of highlighting that feature. So coming here, I can go and let's say I want to select most of this. I can come into some of the trim actions. I can trim the selection. That's going to take a bounding box for that selection. Or I can take the remove air, and if I select that, it will only select the things within that are touching air, or that are basically just removing the air, as it says. The next is hollow. So hollow is really good in combination with other things. So if I click this, for example, it will select the things that are not touching the air, and you can then like delete it, for example. So it doesn't look like anything happened here, but if I take a new selection and just kind of delete that out, it's probably going to be a bad example because we're using some colored blocks here. You can kind of see it. See how it's kind of hollowed in there from that brush selection that I did. So really powerful when you are using these different trims and selections and brushes in parallel. Next thing that I wanted to highlight is the target. Target, you're going to be switching back and forth between targets, whether you're in a brush or selection based on what you're doing. So if you want to select a specific block, for example, let's say I just want to delete that block. I'm just selecting it, hitting the delete button. That is using the block target. If I want to use the face target, it's going to do the block above it. And so, for example, if I just use Control F in this case, I'm just pasting in a block above it. And so it's really good for that finite or fine detail precision on there. Or if you're messing with terrain, for example, and you don't want to like select the ground itself, it's also really good for face of just clicking that. We have the origin as to, hey, where are you clicking that? These are the coordinate points of that. And then you can manually change the size. So if I just wanted a 1x1 block, and let's say it's going to go up, let's say 20 blocks, I can go and do that. Now I can just paste or fill that in automatically, and you're going to get a little 1x1x20 little block tower there. So cool. That's a high level of selection. Brush, we kind of went over brush. Brush is the same in selection as it is in brush mode, only it's kind of what it says. One is selecting it and one is brushing it. So a big thing that I want to highlight that I didn't in talking about selection is the different brushes. These are the different blocks that, or different shapes that we have. So we have like pyramid, for example. We have a cylinder. So you can come in here, you can uniformly change the size. So if I just want to change the length of this and stamp this in, I can go and do that. Or if I wanted to, let's make this the height higher and the length smaller, you can do that as well. So pretty intuitive when it comes to this. We also have single block. So if you want to come in here and just kind of paint that around, you can also do that as well. Now I'm going to change this back to, let's say, ellipsoid. The block filters are really interesting as well. So if I come in here to mask mode and let's go to a different part, now that we have all these green and red blocks around. If I change the mask to just the default where it's air, it's going to change everything except air into that. So I can just easily come in here, basically paint on these blocks. Let's make this a little bit more interesting by changing the block here. And then I also have replace block. This is kind of going to do the opposite of that, where it's just replacing air. If I wanted to come in here and select a specific block that it's going to be replacing, let's say, again, I'm middle clicking here. I want to replace oak leaves with this block. I can come in here. Let's remove air so you can get more of a specific view as to what's happening here. So I'm just painting. It is only picking up those blocks. So you can see some of the other block types are not getting picked up because I only have oak leaves in my list here. So you can get pretty fancy with the different lists you can create here. So next up, we're going to move over. I'm going to go pretty quick on these other tools. Next is going to be paste preview. And so first thing I want to do, let's use magic select here just because it's going to go faster. Come over here. Keynote, you always have to pay attention to your target. So in that case, I'm like, why is it not selecting? You probably saw the look on my face. I had the face block selected. So in this case, to use certain tools like Magic Select, you will actually need the proper target. So in this case, the face, because I wasn't actually selecting any block here. So let's say I just wanted to copy the top of that. I can use like Control C, for example. Then if I wanted to paste this, if I go Control V, that's all I did right there. It actually switched me into paste preview mode automatically. I can come in here and I can now paste this on here. So really cool when you just want to duplicate things, maybe build a wall. There are other features here, like if I wanted to rotate this, let's rotate it by 90. I can come paste it. It's a pretty symmetric thing that I just selected, so it's pretty hard to see what just happened, but it did rotate that 90 degrees. So if it wasn't uniform, you'd see that a little bit more. You can also mirror it between the Z and X axis as well. Line tool, we just had a lot of improvements on the line tool. Let me find a good place to demo this. So line tool works a lot of ways like selection, but as the name implies, it is a line. So you can come in here, let's change the face again. Again, you can use Control Z to undo that. I didn't like that because I, again, had to change the target because I want to demo this by showing what happens if it is above the terrain. So I can come up here, select different control points. I can change basically the number of blocks in the horizontal, vertical direction. I can come in and I can now fill that. I'll press the button here. And you can also, I already had that transaction, but let's say I just wanted to make some complex shape where I've already filled those in, but now I want to fill that in again. I can click on the fill button again and voila, let's deselect that as well. Or you can delete it. I meant to click that button. There we go. So deselected that. So you can make some really cool things. It's going to just have linear lines between those different control points, but you can get pretty complex with what you're doing with those. Next is ruler. Not much to this. This will literally just tell you the distance between two different points. And so we do hope to improve this tool. I think this could be pretty powerful in the future. But right now, if you just kind of want to measure things out, it's really handy from that perspective. It'll also show you the coordinates as well. Smart fill. Smart fill is really powerful when it comes to, hey, I want to just replace all the blocks that are touching here. So in this case, if I click this surface right here, it will basically change all those red blocks to blue. It's not doing all of these just because it is hollowed out. This is a hollowed out structure, and so that's probably not the best example, but if I come here, you can see kind of how it's working. It does work with specific bounds, and so it won't go infinite. So you saw in that case, I'll have to click twice to have that whole ring change to those blue blocks. And so I'm gonna undo that. Next up, we have just terrain tools. We have smooth and roughen. So I'll come out here and using smooth, so it's smoothing out kind of the rough edges that were on that, or just those lines basically you got with that brush that I put. This is really good for just terrain. I don't know if green and red blocks are the best terrain here, but you kind of get the point. And then roughen is kind of doing the opposite of smooth. So if I do that, you can see it's a lot more rough than what I was doing before. Uses brushes. We went over brushes, high level. You kind of get the point there. I did want to highlight the modes here. I don't think I talked about this when I was covering selection, but keyboard, for example, we're near the default, which is mouse and keyboard. You can use the keyboard shortcuts, but if you just want to use the keyboard shortcuts to like lock in, so when you move the mouse, your cursor or brush isn't moving around, you can have that. So as long as I have the viewport in focus, if you don't, you might be like, hey, I'm pressing the buttons, what's happening here? You can see what's happening on my keyboard here. Again, page up and down is the Y-axis. So that works with brushes and selection kind of across the board. Next up is flatten. Flatten's really good for if you're like, hey, I like this area, I don't like these trees. I can come in here and just wipe this out. And you can see exactly how that's working. Again, you can change the radius. You can change how high it is, removing some of the brush, the terrain that might be above that. All right, extrude. Extrude, I'll go back to the lighthouse because I think that'll be a good place to show that. We have remove and add for extrude. So in this case, this is add. I can come in and it just takes that block and either adds it or removes it. All right, next I want to highlight our repeat tool. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna use magic select to, let's take the top of this lighthouse right here. And then I will go to repeat. Repeat, you actually need the selection before you enter the tool. A few of our tools are like that, where you need to do something before you do it. We have warnings on it if you have not taken that action. There's two different modes for repeat. It's either the line or grid, and it's gonna repeat based on what you have selected right here. I'll actually do another magic select here. There we go. That's actually a little bit better. All right, so let's go to grid repeat. Grid repeat, you actually have controls of what axes you want to actually add in here. So if I just wanted it Y, it's gonna go straight up, for example. It's kind of fun having all of these on. You can change how many times it's repeating and then just click reply or apply. And so depending on how many, it might take a second. This one, it did it pretty quick here. So you can make some really fun just patterns and all of that. Next thing is going to be the summon tool. So let's come down here. And then let's go to summon tool. You can type the animal name or just browse. Let's do a sheep here. And I can click. There is my handy dandy sheep. And so you might need to pause entities, unpause entities, depending on what you're trying to do. Having them tick once will help if, depending on how they were rendered, or if they're rendered up in the sky, for example, they'll fall down. I mentioned that before. Next thing you can do once you've selected your entity, you can rotate it, for example, but you can also go into the entity inspector directly, and depending on what you want to do, there's certain properties here that you can see the properties of the sheep specifically. Some of them you can modify. So the value of the color, for example, I can come in here and say 2, for example, unpause it, and now it's a purple sheep. So I can go back. You do have to have it at least tick once for that to propagate, that change you made. Next is going to be workbench. Workbench works for blocks that have different properties. And so an example of that is stairs. So if I just make a selection of stairs, for example, I still have magic select on. So I'm gonna hold shift to have a lot of stairs all at once. I'm gonna keep the selection right there. So when I go into workbench, if you hover over a block that can change because of workbench, it'll show you what the keyboard shortcuts are. So in this case, I can left click, for example. It's gonna change or rotate in this case, or I can shift control left click, and that is going to change the top and bottom. So if I just wanted all the stairs to be down and just kind of flat on the top and add some texture to something, you can certainly do that. All right, next up is the farm tool. So some of you have asked, well, why is this farm tool here? This is kind of a weird tool for the editor team to include. So we actually included it. It was we were kind of laughing internally about it because you could debate on the utility of this for professional creators, for example. I think more players that are dabbling into editor, it's going to be a fun tool. But the history of the farm tool actually came from it being an extension. So you actually can build tools directly into editor, and the farm tool was an example. And so if you actually are curious what the code to build a tool like this is, you can go to our GitHub page and look at that sample and actually see what the code is doing there. And so we just thought, hey, it's Minecraft. Farms are a part of Minecraft. Why don't we just ship this feature? And so you can specify what crop you want, if animals are on there, irrigation, and you can just stamp on different farms. So the sheep look a little bit weird. I have to tick them once to not be floating in the air. And so, yeah, you can get farms really quickly. And so next up is Block Inspector. Block Inspector, similar to Workbench, allows you to modify certain properties and see kind of what different properties the specific block you selected are. So in this case, it's just fence. You can come in here. Certain ones you can modify, similar to Entity Inspector. So if I want that to be jungle, for example, or let's say spruce, you can see that a little bit better. Let's get a little closer. You can see that fence post now is a different color than the rest of them. All right, so that is a high level of our tools. There's just a few other things I want to highlight here. The next is going to be structures. So we already talked about structures very, very briefly, but let's come in here. I'm going to magic select. I'm just going to keep using the top of this lighthouse as my example. Again, make sure your target is what you want. So in this case, it selected a few of them. Let's say, yeah, that's the structure I want for the sake of it. I can go to the structure tool and I can say new from selection. And let's say demo lighthouse. I can save that. That is going to be saved as a new structure. And the cool thing with the structure manager, I can easily go back and forth between other structures. So I had this other one that's Bryant's lighthouse. I can copy it to my clipboard, go to paste preview, and now I can just stamp these structures in my world. So I could have a ton of different lighthouses. Let's go to that demo lighthouse. I guess I already called something demo lighthouse. Oh, here's the one. So you can come in here. I just created this one. You can stamp the top of these lighthouses into your world as well. So this also persists through different sessions. And so you can do a lot of complex things, and you can close out editor, come back, and it's all going to be there. You can actually share these structure lists with other people, kind of an advanced feature. But if you're in BDS, for example, you can have co-create together in editor and use the same structure list, which is really powerful. All right, the next thing I want to highlight is Vibrant Visuals. So Vibrant Visuals is now shipping as a default. We have chosen to not include it in editor by default. And the reason for that is it's kind of hard to see things around you. And so similar to what I was talking about before with lighting, where we've intentionally made it so you can see a little bit better in caves, we chose not to enable Vibrant Visuals by default just to allow it to be easier. So the first thing you need to do is enable that. And so similar to what the warning says right here is this is a feature we're actively working on still. This is a pretty new thing for us as well. The reason we built this into editor is to modify Vibrant Visuals. It's pretty technical. You have to go into JSON. You have to modify the code in JSON to see changes. Testing is really hard because you can't see those until you save the file, load into your world. And we wanted to make that so, hey, what you see is what you get. When you move things around, you actually get the updates with Vibrant Visuals in that visual way. So when you click that button, it does take a little bit to load. We are working on that. We're going to have a progress bar eventually there. So don't lose hope. Click it. You have to wait a little while. But things like atmospherics, when you come in here, I'm going to make this a little bit wider so you can see kind of what I'm doing. Certain features work with different parameters like time of day, for example. So the sky horizon color, I'm going to come in here and change it to be this node right here. I can come in here. I can now click on this and change the sky color, which is pretty cool. I won't go into too many details. Another thing I just wanted to highlight here is like contrast. You can come in here, just modify some of these values, and you can make some really crazy worlds with some of this. The other cool thing with this is, let's say I wanted to save this or make a world that had these colors. This might be a little too extreme for me, but maybe this is what you want. You hit generate resource pack. It will automatically create this link for you. You can click this. This is opening on a browser here, and this will generate the file. So as I mentioned, the code, all of these things I change actually change the value of those JSON. So I can come in here. This is essentially creating the resource pack for me, but if I don't want to get into the technical details here, I can just hit create. It's going to actually bundle all of that up for me into this tool that we're also building called MC Tools. So you can go to mctools.dev if you're curious to make add-ons and things like that. And then you can also just download the project directly. And so pretty cool that it just packages all of that up for you. So now that let's say this is the world, what do I do with this world? There's a couple of things I can do. I can test it. I can click this button. It will drop me in. I can set it to survival or creative mode or whatever I want, and I can test the world. Or you can actually export this. So I can click the export button. I can change all of the different game settings, just general settings here, difficulty. I can make this hardcore. It will save that out as a world, and I can give that to my friends. I can play it myself. Pretty cool. Something even more powerful is we actually have a publish to realms feature. So if you have an active Realm subscription, you need to be signed in before you actually load into your world. You can click that button, you can select your realm, you can select your slot, and you can publish it directly into your realm. And so that is very powerful. If I wanted to play this world on my phone, or if I wanted to jump over to my Xbox and play with my friends, it opens up a ton of possibilities. So let's say I wanted to create a crazy hill with all these skeletons that my friends and I were going to go fight. I could just use brushes, draw these hills in editor, summon the different skeletons on it, publish to my realm on my Xbox, and now my friends and I, within minutes, have created this crazy world, and we're now fighting all these skeletons together. And so you can do some really cool, crazy things like that in editor. And so hopefully this was a really good overview of what editor is. Went into a little depth on certain areas, but definitely just touched the surface in others. So as mentioned, we're going to hope to get some tutorials. So, hey, how did we build this lighthouse? How did we build a few other things? Like, give me the actual practical, what do I need to know to do that? So stay tuned for those. If you do have questions, definitely reach out, put some comments here. We do have Discord channels in the main Minecraft Discord server. We do have an editor channel, so check that out as well if you have questions. Also build something and share it. We'd love to see what you guys are using editor to build. So with that, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. And hopefully you found this valuable. So thank you very much. Bye.